so that we could open it up and put our luggage inside. So TIA was the watchword here. And once we arrived at Victoria Falls, one of the first things we did was we went to a local marketplace, an open air marketplace, and they would sell different handmade crafts. And this was the leader of our group, the fellow with the hat and the camera. It was asking these fellows, how long does it take to carve a giraffe, a wooden giraffe? I think it's about 2 days. But they were very friendly and very eager to show us their wares. And they had various, this is a rhinoceros carved in jade, which is very wonderful work. And I thought there was another, yeah, there it is.
Oh,
and
yeah.
some fabrics. This lady was showing off her wonderful fabric. And the reason, there was a reason why we went to Victoria Falls first. And I don't know if you know, Victoria Falls is, well, depending on whether you're talking about the elevation drop of the falls or the flow rate going over the falls, Victoria Falls is one of the biggest falls in the world. The other is Iguazu Falls in South America. But we were in Victoria Falls, and with the tremendous flow of water, there's always a mist, like a cloud rising out of the earth. And so it's very wet. And there's a phenomenon during the full moon where the moonlight, the light of the full moon, will create a moonboat in the mist. And we were there specifically to photograph and observe the moonbow. This image was taken at night, complete darkness, except for the moonlight. And I had the ISO on my camera turned way up, I think 12,800 ISO, tremendously high. That's why you see some noise in the photograph. And this was 1.3 seconds. Obviously, it was a tripod mounted image, and you'll notice that I will be talking about kind of the backstory, the photographic techniques on many of these photographs, because that was part of the reason we were there. And then I took this image, and then I worked it in my digital darkroom, as they say, and came up with this image. And pretty much the same image, just adjusted. Everything was adjusted a little bit. So we got the moonbow. And then the next morning, two of us, myself and my roommate, took a helicopter ride over Victoria Falls. And this is the Zambezi River flows into this, basically a big trench in the earth. It's sandstone that got worn away, and then it comes into this trench and then goes out through another narrower trench in the earth. And you've got, this is Zambia on the left, and then Zimbabwe on the right. And I know, so essentially we were in Zambia and Zimbabwe. I don't have a stamp on my my
passport.
My passport, thank you, for Zambia, but I did have to pay, when I went on the helicopter ride, I did have to pay for the privilege of being in Zambian airspace. So I count that as a country that I was visited.
And if you find yourself wanting to bow, it's because this is the background for the Borohu.
Oh yeah, okay,
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then another view of the Zambezi River falling over Victoria Falls, and you can see the mist. You know, being out there at night, it was like being in a rainstorm. I had a poncho. I had to cover my head and the camera with the poncho while operating the camera controls. And after Victoria Falls, we traveled to our first lodge, 4 days stay. This is the Pangolin Voyager. It's a houseboat. And this was our home. And we lived on the river for 4 days. And this is the Chobe River. Chobe River enters the Zambezi River before it goes over Victoria Falls. So we were upstream from Victoria Falls. And what you're seeing is that the land that you're seeing is Namibia. On the other side of the river is Botswana. So we were between Namibia and Botswana. And
Very quick question about the shot with the rainbow and the waterfalls.
yes,
Was that the same shot with like some sort of filter that you did, or were they two separate shots taken at different times?
I think they were, it was the same shot, I believe. And I adjusted it. I had greatly, I reduced the noise. I adjusted the exposure and the lighting. And I was trying to emphasize the colors in the rainbow. So it was some software adjustments of the same image. And there was some cropping. That's why the size might look a little different. There was definitely cropping.
Thank you.
Okay, and on the river, we lived on the houseboat, like I said, but we traveled, we did our game drives, as they're called, from a launch boat. This boat had places with swiveling seats and camera mounts for I think it was 6 photographers on each boat. I had a little sunshade up top. And the schedule, the basic schedule for the game drive, and this applied to the boat as well as when we were on land-based lodges. We woke up early, around 5 or 5:30 in the morning. We had a little coffee or tea, maybe a biscuit, and then the morning game drive, we were out on the water, 6 a.m., maybe 6:30. If it was a leisurely morning, and would have a mid-morning break, a beverage and a biscuit, and then we returned to the boat or the lodge by around 10:30 or 11. Then we would have our kind of brunch. It was a breakfast, lunch kind of meal, a big meal, and then we would have a break or a leisure time for 2 or 3 hours. We could take a nap. We could upload our photos to a backup hard drive or whatever, or we could share images with our fellow travelers. Then we had an afternoon game drive about 3 p.m. We would start until about 7. Now this was in May, and this was in the Southern Hemisphere, remember, and so this was late fall or just before winter time. So it was dark. By 5 o'clock, it was dark, but we were out there in the sunset and even after the sunset. And then we would have an evening meal, a large meal in the evening. And so this is the houseboat, very, very comfortable. This is the area, this is our dinner table and just meeting table where we would share images and talk to each other. And had a sun deck up top. This is our cabin. The fellow here is from our local camera club, and he came along and we shared kind of double occupancy on the trip. And I learned about this trip. When I mentioned camera clubs, I have to say, we learned about Magnum excursions because Buddy had given a presentation to the Upper Marion Camera Club. And I looked at that. He said, this sounds like a great experience. So I contacted Buddy, and he was putting together a 4x4 trip, as he called it, 4 lodges, 4 nights each. And I asked Jeff if he would be my double occupancy companion. He agreed. So this is what it was like on the boat. Buddy standing there on the boat, and Jeff with his camera on the gimbal head mount. It's balanced so you could move the camera kind of like a machine gun on a helicopter, I guess. And in fact, I don't know if I should laugh or not, but one of our fellow travelers was a Marine who had service in Vietnam, and he was on a helicopter gunship. And he kept remarking how similar this was to a helicopter gunship experience that he had in Vietnam. But of course, we're just shooting pictures here. And here's a view from our houseboat. This is Botswana. Botswana is a little hilly. Actually, it has different game. You probably we saw more elephants on the Botswana side of the river. Yeah, we also saw hippos. It's a shallow river, so there were islands where the game, the elephants and the hippos would come and graze. And you can see that, the life of a hippo is not easy. He's pretty well scratched up, and that's from fights. That's not from boats. And here you can see a family of hippos on the other side of a little grass island with our boat in the background. We could hear at night, it was really wonderful. We could hear the sounds of hippos and the sounds of lions. They seemed to be coming from the Botswana side, but it was a really peaceful way to fall asleep. What can I say? Hippos, they're interesting. And I have to say, we're in a boat, right? We're in a launch boat. It has a pretty powerful motor, and thank goodness the boat is faster than the hippos. And you say, how did you get so close to these hippos? Well, part of the reason is, we were in this boat and we're fairly safe. And the other reason is we had a long camera lens. I used a 100 millimeter to 400 millimeter zoom lens, and I could open that up and zoom close, get some close-ups. And I really like the hippo's face and their expressions. Apparently,
look like they're smiling.
The hippo life is pretty good, pretty good life. And sometimes when you get close, the hippos will let you know. And I don't speak hippo, but I bet this hippo is saying, don't get any closer. I'm pretty sure about that. And being in a boat, and we would go along the shore, we could see a lot of animals and wildlife along the shore, some small, some large. Here's an African lizard on the shore. And a beautiful beaded pattern on its scales. And then another one trying to hide.
Nicely camouflaged.
It's just catching some rays. And I have to say that, like I mentioned before, this was late fall, early summer. It was fairly chilly in the morning. And so we would have dress in layers and sweatshirts and things.
Jerry, we know the lens gets you really close. For a relative size description, how big is that lizard? Is that like a little lizard, or is that huge? Or we're so close, it looks so big in the picture.
About 18 inches, about 1.5 feet long. And then we could, from the boat, again, we could see some land animals. This is an impala ram with just beautiful pattern on the horns. And groups of impala that we saw came in two varieties. One, a group of all female impalas led by a single ram, and the females were his harem. Others, and then you ran across groups of all male rams who didn't have their own harem. So there's the harem group, and then the all rams. And then here we saw a kudu. You can identify the kudu by its nice striped pattern, daubing its horns in the mud along the side of the river, and then kind of showing off his handiwork with his muddy horns. And you'll notice that the animals do appear to be a little timid when they're at the side of the river, and that's for good reason, which I'll show you later. You'll see.
I just learned recently that some striped animals are striped because their hair is striped, and some are striped because their skin is striped. Do you know what the situation is with the kudu?
Well, it's definitely hair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a fur coat, you can see. And this one, we come across various scenes, and I had never seen in nature a blue water lily, and just caught my eye. Took a picture of it. And the elephants, and you see, I tended to group the photos by animal, and this is the elephant section of the presentation. And this is a family of elephants in a hurry to come to the river to have their drink and their bath and their splash in the water. And that's most likely the matriarch of this group, and maybe her children. And I really enjoyed when the elephants go into the water and their skin gets all wet. It really becomes almost black, very dark color. And this elephant had just emerged from the water, so the skin was black, and then you could see the wet feet were picking up the white sand from the shoreline. And here's an elephant feeding in the grassed area in the river. And the elephants had a specific way of eating the grass. They loved the grass, but they would put their trunk down and they would wrap it around the base of the group of grass, a clump of grass, and they would lift it up and they would shake it back and forth, shake the water and dirt off, and then they would put it in their mouth and eat it. So that was a behavior that they would consistently do. And so you can sort of tell the depth of water here, because it's up to the the head of the elephant. And talking about behaviors, this is a family, and I'm willing to bet that that's the mother, that's the matriarch, and surrounded by sisters and aunts and other family members. This little baby here lolling in the mud, there's no way you're going to get close to that elephant. I mean, she's like in a fortress right now. And you could really see, it was very evident the family relationships that these elephants have. Very, very family and matriarchal structures. And here, talking about gesture, elephants love, well, they love mud and dust for two reasons. One, for insect control, and the other is for sunblock, because their skin is sensitive to the sun. And this elephant, I don't know whether this elephant was tired and was looking for a nap, or whether it was trying to get some dust on its body. But it doesn't matter. Wherever an elephant wants to lay down, that's where it drops. And I actually have a sequence of the elephant standing up and then falling over. And you could see where it kind of went over a little extra, and the feet are, all the 4 feet are still in the air. And here's an elephant. This is a male elephant. And again, I don't speak elephant, but I learned that when the elephants flare their ears to the side, that's a warning that you're getting too close. They don't want you to get any closer. And I should mention, this is an African elephant, which have the very large ears. By comparison, the Indian elephants have much smaller ears. But the ears serve, as ways to hear, number one, and number two, that to help them. There's a lot of veins, vascularization in the ears, and they can wave the ears and cool off a little bit in the warm months. But this elephant was slapping its trunk on the water and flaring its ears, and that's what it looked like. And we did not get any closer. I just zoomed in with the lens to get closer, but it's a dramatic moment.
They're fast too, right? Elephants.
They're fast, yes, they are. But I have to say they're not as fast as the rhinoceros, which we'll see later. And then we did see baboons. This was a family of baboons living in a tree. And again, we're in the boat on the Chobe River near the shore, looking up. And they were very active and jumping around, making lots of noise, scrapping with each other. And this one just hesitated for a minute. And it got a nice profile. And
the eyes.
Yeah. What I like is this is almost like Rembrandt lighting. It wasn't intentional, it just turned out that way. Rembrandt lighting is when the light comes from the side, and then there's just a little triangle of light on the far side of the nose. So it's captured some Rembrandt lighting in this baboon. And again, looking for gesture and behaviors. This was an early morning, a couple of baboons scrapping on the beach. And they were noisy, and they were serious about it. But it did not last very long, fortunately. And then here's some grooming behaviors. This is probably the alpha male of the group and a female kind of showing deference to the alpha male. And again, a family in the early morning, walking up to the river for a drink of water. And this photograph was made to emphasize the rim lighting along the fur around the profile of the animal. And to do that, I went and overrode what the camera thought was a good exposure, and I reduced the exposure manually to emphasize the light around the edges of the baboons. So these are the kind of techniques that we would talk about and try out all during our safari. Here's talk about gesture. Here's a mother supervising her young baboon who was practicing his hanging skills. He did very well. And again, this is some lions. And we were near the shore. We were about 50 feet from these two lionesses, 50 feet, I estimate. And definitely they knew we were there. They definitely knew where we were. But we're not in any danger. They were more concerned. There was apparently a male lion over to the left side of this photograph. And they were aware and more concerned with the presence of the male lion than they were with us. We were not a threat. And for most of these lodges and game reserves where we went, the animals were habituated, not in the bad sense, they weren't dependent on humans for food or anything, but they just were okay with us being there. And they said, you're not a source of food, you're not a threat. They've learned that. As long as you keep your limbs in the vehicle, in the boat or the vehicle, and don't stand up, you'll be okay. And that's what we did. And here again, from the boat, looking up to the bank of the river, this is a Cape Buffalo. Again, another one of the big five. And I don't know what happened. Okay. And you might ask, what are those things in the, what are the things in the air? Those are dragonflies. The air was thick with dragonflies. Insects were not really a problem. They didn't really bother us. For the small insects, we had insect repellent, and I had a hat that was impregnated with some insect repellent, and it worked out okay.
So Jerry, on your computer screen, it appears that you have like a window or something covering some of the photograph.
How do I get away from that?
Is it a window you can kind of like minimize? In the top right corner of that little box, you can click the little line. There you go. Oh, there's like a line and a box and an X. I don't know what it is, but
I'm going to stop and restart sharing.
okay. I love how when you describe all these techniques, I love how that makes sense to somebody enough so that we can all benefit from seeing the results, even if we don't understand what the technique is.
It's gone. Yeah. Okay, so this is a Cape Buffalo, and I love the horns, the curved horns. They're the nickname for these are dagger boys, like dagger, and you can see why when you look at those sharp horns. And then here's another Cape Buffalo, and you can see the horn. The top of the head is completely covered with horns, and that's because this is a male Cape Buffalo, and the males need the thick covering of horns because they fight other males. Now, in contrast, the females have hair, mostly hair on top of their heads. That's a female Cape Buffalo. Looks like she's asking, what are you looking at? But I thought she was lovely. And here they are having their drink, and they are fairly nervous, and for good reason. There's the male with the thick horn on the head. There's the female with the hair on the top of the head, and then she's nursing her calf.
The males fight each other, and they bash those hard bony plates together. That's
okay. And so the reason here coming up, here's the reason why they are so nervous when they're by the water. There, the Nile crocodile. And we saw plenty of those. And it's a crocodile, not an alligator, and it has the narrow snout. And they're called Nile crocodiles. we saw plenty of them. And here's one we were passing in our boat, with its mouth open. I don't think it was baring its teeth for us. I think it was just cooling off. And then there's one launching itself into the river, into the water. And here's one coming up to the boat, and this was in mid-morning, so this was its breakfast. It was some kind of one of the local birds that it had caught, and was coming up to the shore to have his or her breakfast. And this, just a scene, is a village scene, some people working a field, and I just thought the silhouette was nice, told a story. And this, we went to a village. This was the village of one of the guides, the boat operators took us to his village, and these are dugout canoes. They're called makoros, and this is the main mode of transportation for the villagers. And these in back here, this is these are fishing nets. They use fishing as one of their ways to that they subsist. And of course, there were lots of birds. This is some kind of egret along the shore hunting. Another egret flying. And here you can tell that I was not panning. I was using a very fast shutter speed to stop the motion. If I had been panning with a longer shutter speed, the bird would have been in focus, but everything else around it would have been, more or less blurred, motion blurred. But we practiced both techniques, fast shutter speed and panning. Here's an evening shot. We every morning and evening we would take sunrise and sunset photographs. This is a sunset photograph, and just the colors were just delicious there. The egret hunting and the air just filled with these dragonflies. And here's a heron perched on a branch over the river, looking for food. He was fishing, and he's very, very alert. And then once he spotted, or she, I don't know, spotted a fish, he just came to alert. The leg went up, the hood on the top of the head went up, and said, that bird spotted something, definitely. So it just, I just loved the gesture of the bird. And this is a kingfisher. Specifically, it's a pied kingfisher. I just caught a minnow, a small fish in the water, and this bird had the habit of it would hover at one elevation over the water, and then after it spotted a fish, it would dive, catch the fish. Most of the time, it would catch the fish, and then go onto a branch to enjoy its meal. This is called an African fish eagle. It has the white breast like the American eagle, but more white. African fish eagle. Now the guides on these trips, they see these all the time, and we're amazed, and we love all this stuff when we see them for the first time. But they get a little bit jaded, and after a while, they would call this bird on a stick, BOS. But they were more than bird on a stick to us. Okay, this is a water bird called a jacana, and it walks on lily pads, and you see the giant feet. It spreads out its weight so that it can walk on the lily pads, and it also makes its nest among the plants. on the surface of the water. And here's
Oh, the eggs are so beautiful.
this is a jacana's nest. You can see how the patterns on the eggs really provide a great camouflage against the nest material. And we've got a bee eater. I don't know specifically which type of bee eater it is, but it's resting on a papyrus reed. And if you didn't know what papyrus looks like, this is it. This is a papyrus leaf or plant. And I just love the colors on this bee eater. And another type of bee eater with looks like a mayfly in its mouth. There are several types of bee eaters. I could not keep them straight. And another bird, a shorebird. This is a hammerkop, a Dutch name. You can see where it got its name. And this is a yellow-billed stork. And we were in the river, kind of maintaining, with the boat motor, maintaining a single spot in the river while we were near an island. And the island was occupied by nesting yellow-billed storks. And the storks would be bringing back, there was a regular back and forth. The storks would fly away and then come back with little bits of greenery to build up their nests. And this one, that I like this because it really shows the green, the tips of the wing of the yellow-billed stork have a nice iridescent green color. And we played around with abstracts. This was one evening, just heading back to our houseboat, and just the color and the waves made a nice abstract pattern. Here you can see the shoreline up here. And then here in the evening, again, this is one of our sunset pictures. The boat driver, I was trying to get this stork or egret in this sun reflection, and we were too far to the left. So the boat operator moved the boat, and then we overshot it. We're over here, and then we came back and we got it just right.
That should look very familiar.
Right, and it works out well for a visual tefillah with plenty of room for white text on either side of the picture. Okay,
Oh, so
now this
pretty.
this is a wonderful bird. It's called a lilac-breasted roller. I could see where the lilac-breasted part gets its name, but the roller, I'm not sure why it's classified as a roller. And I used to raise pigeons when I was younger, and we had rollers and tumblers. And the roller pigeons would actually, as they were flying forward, they would roll in a forward position. I think this was a way to confuse predators. So rollers would roll forward, and a tumbler pigeon would kind of stop in midair and then flip backwards and then drop vertically, kind of drop through the air. Both defensive mechanisms. And I only explain that by way of saying I don't know why this was called a roller. I
Could be the
never
same
saw
thing.
it roll. There's another lilac-breasted roller,
Gorgeous.
or
Beautiful.
BOS if you prefer. Here's a bird. This is a red-billed hornbill, and common name, they call it the banana bird. And you can tell why. And it has a little seed, and then it flipped it up and flipped it into its mouth. And this is a red-billed hornbill called the banana pepper bird. And this was one of our other, this is our second lodge called Cheetah Plains, I believe. Cheetah Plains and the Sabi Sands Game Reserve, Cheetah Plains. So this building, there's an elevated walkway to get to this building, and there's the front of the building. This is actually our room, a room for two guests, and it was very nice. Even had an outdoor shower, which was usable in midday or early afternoon. Was not usable in the evening because it got too cold. I think the temperature dropped to probably 40 to 45, fairly chilly. And the game operators were very nice, and they would have waiting for us, they'd have blankets and sometimes hot water bottles, which we could put under the blanket. It was quite nice. And this Cheetah Plains Lodge also had its own dam. This is we would call it a pond. What we call a pond, the water portion, they call a dam. And so this is a dam, and it has a blind in the middle of the dam. So you have to go through a tunnel. It's a concrete tunnel. You walk through it, and you come up inside this observation bunker. And that's what it looked like from the inside. You could look out, you were a few inches above the water level. And that's what it looked like. And then you could see things like an impala ram coming for a drink. And again, they're very wary. I mean, they're ready to jump back in an instant if a crocodile comes. And here's a meerkat, ran into little meerkat eating a cricket or a grasshopper. And here's the meerkat checking out to see if I have any insects that might be edible. The story behind this meerkat is that, see, there's a fellow standing here. He's the owner of this meerkat. This is a kind of a rescued meerkat. I don't know why it's a rescue, but it was. And the original owner, not this guy, but the guy he got it from, had this meerkat plus a civet cat as I don't know, pets or animals that he was taking care of. The meerkat was so possessive that whenever he would pay attention to the civet cat, the meerkat would go and attack the civet cat. It was very possessive. So the previous owner had to give up the meerkat for being too possessive. So this guy was actually training this meerkat to hunt insects on its own. When I saw him, he was walking down a dusty track or path, and the meerkat was following it. It looked like an actual cat. I thought he had a cat following him, but it was this animal. And it was very friendly. When I went down to look at it, he jumped on my shoulders, he or she, I don't know which. And we had a little conversation there at the end. Here's an image. The elephants aren't the only animal that likes dust for insect control. These are wildebeests kicking up some dust and trying to control the insects. Yeah, another wildebeest. And we did see some cheetahs. This is a cheetah. You can tell the cheetah because it has the teardrop path from its eye down to its mouth. So that's a cheetah, and they have the round spots. These are two brothers. They were taking a nap during midday, and again, the guides get a little, I don't know if they're bored, but they've seen them so much. When there's a name they have for when the animals, and the cats in particular, rest during midday, they call it flat cat. So these two were flat catting. So we didn't see any action, but they're still beautiful animals. And then here's speaking of fast animals, this is an African painted dog. This dog was looking for the rest of its pack. They travel in packs. And it's standing on an airport, a small private airport runway. And the pilots that use this runway have to buzz the runway to make sure that there are no animals on the runway before they land. But we followed this dog until it did actually find its pack, and they carried on. I don't know. They have such stamina, they can outrun most animals. They just wear them down, and they keep going and going. And we were really happy to see giraffes. These two giraffes were drinking, having a drink. One's on the lookout while the other's drinking, because they are vulnerable when they have to bend down like that. You can see they do have birds hanging on to its fur. These are, help me out, Lois.
I can't remember the name.
It'll come to me.
They eat the little insects
They're oxpeckers.
They eat the little insects
Yeah.
out of the fur.
Right. And so, they kind of help each other out. Here's one that flew away when the giraffe moved. Then these giraffes, at first we thought maybe they were fighting because the male giraffes can use their head and their ossicones, the two little nodules on top of their head, to fight each other. But these two were very gentle, and this was probably a prelude to some romantic activity. And in fact, here's one that was caressing the other giraffe very nicely. And here's a baby giraffe. You can tell the ossicones here are fairly small, undeveloped, and it's got an oxpecker bird on its forehead. And
Hyena?
this is a baby hyena. This family of hyenas were living in an abandoned termite mound. Because they had dug it out and enlarged it a little bit. And the adults were out hunting, and they left the babies. And this baby came out and was curious about our game vehicle. And it looks so cute and cuddly, but I wouldn't dare come close to this thing. This is, it would do some damage to you if you really tried to touch it. And then we saw some,
Is it ivory?
well, small antelope.
Oh,
This is probably
dick.
a diker.
A diker.
Yeah, probably a diker with a small male, little spiky horns, but beautiful animal. Just by the side of the road that we were traveling on. And then here's a little lion cub. And how did we find the lion cub? These the drivers on these vehicles we're now in Land Rover type vehicles, Land Cruiser or Land Rovers. They use both. And they have radios, and the guides talk to each other so they know where the animals are. So they said, there's some lions. There's a pride of lions with cubs over in such and such an area. So we went over there and we found them. Again, the same rules apply. You don't stick out arms or legs from the vehicle. You don't stand up, and you don't leave the vehicle unless the guide or the tracker tells you it's safe. But these cubs are so cute. And here, this is the mama, a female lion with the cubs. She was leading actually all five cubs. And she definitely looks like she means business. Yeah, not going to take any guff. And then here she is leading the five cubs. There was a little bridge over a stream, and they were walking over the bridge. And this lioness was in the same pride, and probably at least one of those cubs was hers, because they had one female who was watching all five cubs, but they were not all five hers. She was watching all the cubs in the pride. And so this lioness was looking for the other lioness with the cubs. And so we were driving down this track, this path, and she was coming toward us. We didn't run into her literally, but we came upon her. And so what do you do when a lion is coming at you? You put the car in reverse and you drive backwards down the path. And the driver was very skilled. We stayed on the path, and he was driving backwards and narrating the whole time. And this lioness was actually picking up the pace and pushing us faster and faster as we were driving backwards. And eventually she did find her pride and her cubs and took off through the grass.
Any special plan if there's a lion behind you? Also,
Forward quickly.
as you're going in reverse, though.
No, I think you stop.
It's like when you're trying to steal a base in baseball and you get caught between.
Yeah, right. No, I think the idea you would stop definitely and let the animals walk around you.
Incredible.
Here's the male of that pride taking a drink. You can see a lion's life is not easy. Look at he's got scars on his nose, and under his nose he's got some blood. He's been fighting. So he's earned his spot in the pride. And he is coming up from the pond where he took a drink. Here's another lion, which obviously I was attracted to the light on the grass compared to the light on the mane, the rim of the mane. And this lion, and this lion as well, I think this lion is in all fairness, this lion is yawning. He's not growling, even though it looks dramatic if you think of it that way. And then these two, and again, gesture, these two males just touching heads to each other. These two are part of a pride of 4 males with a name called the Birmingham Boys, named after the Birmingham Soccer Club in England. And you can actually look them up, the Birmingham Pride in South Africa. And it'll tell you, that they, they were moved out of this one area. They took over another area. So they keep track of them. They know these individuals. And here they are flat catting in the afternoon. And this is each game vehicle had a guide and a tracker. This was our guide. And they did have, for protection, just in case something went wrong, he had a high-powered rifle and ammunition. Never had to use it, fortunately. And he would show us, things, the animal tracks and kind of animal dung and what that said about the animal and its diet. Here's the guide and the tracker looking at some tracks, and they had heard over the radio that there was a white lion or lioness in a certain area. And a white lion is very rare. It's not an albino lion, but it's a genetic trait. It just has white fur. instead of regular orange or yellow lion's fur. And they found this track, and sure enough, they found her. This is a white lion. This is in the morning. She had just is coming back from hunting, and you'll notice the dark spots on her fur. Those spots are animal dung. I don't know if it's elephant or Cape buffalo, but they cover themselves like with the dung so that their scent isn't obvious to their prey. So that's a disguise for them to make hunting more efficient. There she is. And she's close. I mean, she's probably within 20 feet of the vehicle as she's walking by. Now here's
Zebras.
well, I was going to say zebra, but they call them zebras in South Africa, and they're just beautiful, beautiful animals. And again, the oxpeckers like the zebras as well. Beautiful patterns, each one different. And here's a little zebra walking along. Now they tend to stay in pack groups, a tight group, and it's very hard to isolate one. And so the leader of this expedition was saying, try to get a single zebra and focus on that. So I tried, and finally I got a single zebra by itself walking through the grass. And when I showed this on Facebook, once you know it, one of the first comments I got was, "It looks so lonely." But I wasn't going for lonely. I was going for focus. Okay, here's some zebras, maybe prelude to a little lovemaking here, being nice to each other. And then teenagers are teenagers wherever you go. This little teenager was not happy about something and was telling his mother all about it. And again, we practiced our panning skills here. I used a slow shutter speed, and I moved the camera so the zebra was more or less in focus, and everything else was moving with the camera lens as I rotated. So, we got to actually practice various techniques in photography. And it was quite nice. Every mid-morning and mid-afternoon, we would stop for a break and have a beverage, coffee, tea, and a biscuit perhaps. And it was just nice. And we would talk about, the animals we saw and all this. This was another lodge. This was, I forget which lodge it was, Cheetah Plains. It might have been Cheetah Plains Lodge. They'll sort of blend together after a while. This lodge was on a river, and it would have various animals, elephants, warthogs, different animals would come to the river to drink. At night, you would hear the hippopotamuses grunting, making noises all night long. It was actually quite peaceful. And the perimeter of the lodge actually had an electric fence to discourage animals from actually coming into the compound itself. So it's not like we were camping out in the open here. Got a nice elephant getting a drink, and just the colors. I enjoyed the colors and the water reflection. So like a morning scene, an elephant profile. And this elephant, this was a mother elephant, had a juvenile with her, and she was teaching the elephant. She went up to this tree, and this tree had nuts growing at the top of the tree. So she went up to this big tree, pushed on it and shook it till it shook down the nuts, and it rained nuts onto the ground. And then when she had enough, nuts on the ground, and she and her baby would pick up the nuts with their delicate little trunks and eat them. And we were told, once you get the wider angle shot, kind of think about the smaller scenes, like the tusk, the skin texture, the eyes and the eyelashes and the skin, the feet, they were amazing. And then here's a cute little young one. Even on the land, they still had that same behavior where they would shake the grass, shake the dirt from the grass after they pulled it from the ground and before they put it in their mouth. Here's another baby kind of touching, looking for some tender leaves on a plant. And in this one, we were on a break and we were challenging ourselves to tell a story with a still life image. And so this is Jeff, my roommate Jeff, taking a picture of a little still life. I don't know what story it tells, maybe a little story, but just a little challenge that we made for ourselves. And this was an experience I'll remember. I was on what they called a bush walk, where I went out walking, not on a vehicle, just walking with two guides. They had a rifle with them, and they said, don't take your regular camera. That's too noisy. And I had my little point and shoot with me, which was silent. And they said, okay, stay one arm length away from me, stand back of me, one arm length, and put your foot where my foot was. Don't step anywhere else. And he was very specific. And so we were downwind from this rhino who was taking some shade in this tree in midday. He said this rhino could hear us, could not see us, and could not smell us, but you could tell it was moving around trying to figure out where we were. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, there's no vehicle to jump into, there's no tree to climb or to hide behind. So it was probably the most nervous that I was, but I was with two experienced guides, so it was fine. So it's a good memory of that bushwalk. And now rhinoceros. We had the good fortune to see this mother and 3-week-old baby rhinoceros. And again, they know these individuals, and so they know when this one was born. And it was just a very nice, touching scene of the mother and her baby. And here, we were told to stop by this rhino in the middle of this dirt track. And rhinoceroses are amazingly fast and light on their feet. For such a huge animal, they can go fast and pivot and turn very quickly. Well, this rhino made it clear that we needed to stop the vehicle. And then one thing you should notice, the notches on the ears of these rhinos. This is how they know individuals. They can identify individuals by the notches that they have made on their ears. And poaching of rhinos was a very big deal, very serious issue, because the trade in rhino horn is very lucrative, and I guess it's primarily Chinese in the China market. And these people are very well funded. They described how they could fly in a helicopter, land, come out and dart an animal, sedate them, take a chainsaw, cut off the horns, and then leave. And just leave them mostly to die. Just a terrible waste when you think that this material is probably no different than fingernail material. There's really no health benefit. That's just a belief that really isn't true. So in that case, these rhinos decided to take a nap, and we stopped. We didn't pass them. We waited them out. Not very long, 15 or 30 minutes. And a rhino's life is tough enough without poachers. You can see, there's marks from fights, a little bit of blood from a fight. It's not an easy life. And you might ask, how can you get photos so close of these rhinos? Well, one reason is that they come close to the game vehicles. And again, if you don't stick your limbs out or stand up, they're not going to get alarmed. Now this rhino, you might notice, has the lips are kind of flat across the front. This is a white rhino. They eat mostly all vegetation, basically. And their teeth and their lips are geared for that. So it's a white rhino. The black rhino, which we did not see, have the little pointed lips in the front. That's how you would tell the difference. And there's a nice scene, or a mother and juvenile walking down a path. We got a chance. We got a chance to test our night photography skills. Milky Way, and again, Milky Way would not be observable in the northern hemisphere, only in the southern hemisphere at this time. It was this was like a 40 to 50 second exposure, ISO 3800, fairly open, and a wide open aperture, as wide as you could get. And then you could see that the shadow in this tree, that's actually a bird's nest. A colony of birds have created this nest in the tree. But so the same image, just processed a little differently for exposure, converted to black and white. It's the same image, but I really love how the stars shine through the spaces between the branches of the tree.
Looks like an illustration you'd see in a children's book. I mean, it's hard to believe it's an actual photo. It's just so beautiful.
Fantastical is the word I like.
Yeah. I mean, there's got to be at least 100 stars up there.
You think?
Maybe two.
Incredible.
A few more animals. A water buck, very long fur. Another kudu male. A warthog, also known as Pumbaa, and a larger warthog. And one thing you might think with these tusks, that these long tusks that in the upper side of the mouth are very dangerous. They are dangerous, but the real danger is from these lower tusks, which are very sharp and can cut. So they say, you should be more wary of those than the longer tusks. Okay, now we come to I think the last of the big five, leopard. And the leopards, they don't have the round spots. They have the little rosette patterns. Here's a leopard. I didn't know that leopards could curl their ears up like that, but they can. Here's yawning. There's stretching. And there's, I like this
Camouflage.
to illustrate how effective their camouflage is in the grass, the tall grass. Now this, I'm amused by this, because the animals, they do get quite close to the vehicles sometimes. They don't really pay much attention to them. They kind of go about their business. But what really amused me was this photographer right here is looking at something straight 90 degrees from the leopard. This guy sees it, but this guy is just unaware of the leopard. Here's a leopard who had killed a diker, and I didn't see the kill, but I saw the leopard when it was preparing to take the diker up into the tree so that lions and hyenas wouldn't steal the kill from him or her. And at night, after it got dark, we stayed out, and the guide would have a spotlight and would shine it on various animals. Here's a leopard at night, and this leopard had just dropped down from a tree. It was a thorn tree, thorns all over the place, and there were some birds nesting in that tree, some guinea hens, guinea fowl, I think. And it was up in this thorny tree, grabbing a guinea fowl and coming down. And so it's just one tough animal. I have a lot of respect for these leopards. Here's an owl that we saw after dark. And just some nice scenes. We had a nice foggy morning one morning. And there was a spider web full of dewdrops from the fog.
Wow.
And just a scene, I think a spot of sunlight coming through the clouds, kind of opening up there. And here's an evening scene, some animals, impalas, 2 impala rams. And in the background, if you can see this faint border of a shadow, that's the Drakensberg Mountains in South Africa in the distance. Then here's the group. This is what we did every evening, looking for a scene that we could get a nice sunset picture of. It's my fellow travelers, some of them. That's a termite mound. And I will conclude the presentation with some nice sunset pictures accompanied by music added by Ken Garcia. Do I stop sharing now?
Rabbi's muted. Rabbi, you're muted.
Wow. So yeah, that was really just fantastic. Jerry, thank you so much. And it was really just amazing. The and does anybody have any more questions or any other questions? Feel free to unmute and ask if you do.
I just wanted to say thank you from Annette. Yeah, that was wonderful. Just delightful. Just felt like I went on the trip. Yeah, it was great. Thanks, Jerry. Thanks, Lois.
Glad you
Yes.
could come.
My pleasure, Annette.
I just wanted to also say how much I admire your skill as a photographer, but also as a storyteller. It was just beautiful, a really lovely experience. And I didn't have to leave home. To me, that's very important.
Exactly.
How money we just saved. Yeah.
And again, with great, with apologies and great respect for those of you who actually did know what he was talking about when he talked about his techniques. I certainly apologize for that. But boy, it's so impressive that that you look at it. I mean, I could tell when a photograph is great for whatever, because it looks awesome. But to know how to go about making it that way, is really just impressive. So good for all of you who do know that.
I know enough about the techniques so that if I was there taking the picture, I could then say, oh, I wish I'd have done such and such, but I didn't.
Part of it is volume. You take a lot of pictures with a lot of different settings.
Well, that's true. People ask me, how many photographs did you take in 3 weeks? And the answer is 25,000.
Good thing you weren't using film, right?
Yes, that's right. And good thing I wasn't showing all of them.
So a couple of quick points. One is I realize some of you may have recognized some of those photos from the High Holy Day silent prayer montages. These a bunch of Jerry's photos. All of the photos that you saw in those were Jerry's. Not all of those photos were from Africa, and not all of the Africa photos were there, but you may have recognized some of them. Those rhinos looked like they were guards at a checkpoint, and the beautiful montage at the end and at the beginning is, like I said, part of an hour-long montage of many, even more photos than we saw today. There's a lot more of them, and it's just one continuous kind of slideshow. If it's too long on one slide, you can set your playback speed to go faster, but it's about an hour long. That whole package will also be up in the archives for you to access, and along with this after we're done. And Jerry, isn't this the trip where you came back from Africa and then like a day later you went to Israel?
No, that was my other journey.
Antarctica.
That was the Antarctica one. Okay.
But
I remember
Jerry,
one of them was like I even suggested you should go from wherever it was directly to Israel, and then
I know, and it looked like I humorously say that I arrived in Jerusalem, smelling of penguin and talking of icebergs.
I think it was like a 2-day layover at home.
Right.
And Israel.
well, Jerry, you're truly an artist, really. You
Very much
use
so.
a camera instead of a brush, but your pictures are works of art. So thank you very much for sharing.
Well, I appreciate that. That's what I'm going for.
And just a shameless plug for our congregation. If you'll indulge me for 60 seconds, a quick preview of our Purim experience tomorrow night. Just a little mini clip here.
Oh my.
Not only is it a long-standing tradition to read the story every year, it's also a long-standing tradition for us to dress up in costumes to celebrate Purim every year. Well, lots of people like to dress up like some of the characters in the Purim story. Some people like to dress up in wacky, silly costumes that don't necessarily look like anyone or anything at all. Either way, dressing up in costume is one of my personal favorite parts of celebrating Purim. So just what are we celebrating? Well, on Purim, we celebrate when good won over evil. When a mean leader wanted to turn people against us, we rose up. We stood up for ourselves. And when we celebrate, we replace that hate and anger with joy and celebration. We send gifts of food and love to our friends. We make donations to those in need. We eat Hamantaschen, delicious Purim cookies. And, of course, we sing.
And I will sing a Purim song till the whole world sings along. The brightest day will follow night when you stand up for what is right.
You know this one. Chag Purim, Chag Purim, Chag Gadol hu leyaladim.
מסכות רעשנים, שירים וריקודים. הבה נרישה,
Rush, rush, rush,
הבה נרישה,
rush, rush, rush,
הבה נרישה,
rush, rush, rush.
ברעשנים, הבה נרישה.
So anyway, that's just a little taste, and they dress up in different characters and they tell the story, and we go back and forth. Some of the people on this call are actually involved in it in different ways, and so you'll see some faces and hear some background things, and a couple of families got involved, and so it'll be a lot of fun. So that's tomorrow night. A message will be going out later today, reminding everybody, and that's tomorrow night at 6 p.m. And then we also have Purim morning services on Friday at 9 a.m. on the 26th. So, anyway.
Oh, I don't know, Rabbi, I thought you looked like George Washington in that getup.
It's one of those generic costumes that could, you could, whatever, whoever you say it is, all of a sudden that's what it looks like.
Yeah, it was very, very attractive, very nice. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks. Thank you,
You're
Jerry.
so welcome. Thank you very much for being here.
Bye-bye.
Sign off now. Thank you.
Jerry, that was great. Thank you so much.
It was wonderful.
Have a good rest of the day.